Today, we're going to unpack the incredible and honestly kind of counterintuitive story of a guy who built a billion-dollar empire, Kinko's, from just a single copy machine. But this isn't really a story about getting rich. It's a story about what happens after and why the founder, Paul Orfalea, calls himself a reluctant billionaire. Okay, let's just start with a number that really grabs your attention: $2.6 billion. That is what FedEx eventually paid for the company that Orfalea started with a measly $5,000 loan. It's a huge figure. It just screams success, right? But here's the twist. When you ask him about that massive sale, his first reaction is probably not what you'd expect. He says, "I sold the company for not enough money." Now, it's a bit of a joke, but it also hints at a much, much more complicated relationship with wealth than that big number would suggest. And that, right there, is the central puzzle of our story. We've got a founder who hit this massive level of financial success, but he actively pushes away the whole big shot lifestyle that usually comes with it. He is the reluctant billionaire. You see, his entire mindset was fundamentally anti-billionaire. I mean, he never even used the title. He actually felt guilty about hoarding that much wealth. A lot of it went back to a lesson from his parents. Never be braggadocious. Don't boast, because it just invites jealousy, the evil eye. And the one time he broke that rule, he bought a $22 million private jet just to feel like a big shot. Well, it turned into this huge, costly mistake that led to a whole bunch of bad investments. It was a lesson he definitely learned the hard way. So you're probably wondering, how does a guy with that mindset build an empire worth billions in the first place? Well, it wasn't some grand, lofty vision. Not at all. It was a scrappy, relentless hustle that all started on a college campus. His entire approach really boiled down to this one core philosophy. The business was never his baby. It was a tool, an instrument. And from day one, from the very beginning, Kinko's was for sale. He truly believed that if you love your business, you lose your objectivity. And for him, that little bit of emotional distance was the key to making smart decisions and, eventually, to his own freedom. His whole strategy was basically born out of necessity. Look, he couldn't outspend his main competition, which was the university itself. They had subsidized copiers and subsidized labor. So since a copy was just a copy, he had to change the game entirely. He competed on everything else, staying open way later, providing amazing customer service, and selling all these related products like binders and stationery that his competitors just completely ignored. His secret weapon? A really healthy dose of paranoia. He didn't think like a CEO from inside his office. He thought like a rival from across the street. By constantly imagining how a competitor could kick his ass, he was able to find his own weaknesses before anyone else could. It was this relentless, kind of brutal process of self-critique that kept him one step ahead. But, that kind of obsessive focus and super fast growth, it always comes with a price tag. For Orfalea, that journey from a tiny copy shop to a corporate giant wasn't just stressful. It was physically and emotionally punishing. He talks about this fine line where responsibility just becomes a crushing burden. Imagine feeling the weight of 25,000 employees relying on you. For 30 years, he was constantly worried about paying the bills, and this led to very real physical problems. He couldn't sleep, his neck was always in pain, and, as he bluntly puts it, he had bad gas. One of his biggest regrets looking back is that he was so focused inward on all that pressure that he just didn't say thank you enough to the people who were right there building the company with him. Talk about a lesson in humility. Just as he was starting to feel a little invincible, taking himself seriously, the universe just hit back hard. The day after feeling on top of the world, the entire U.S. publishing industry sued Kinko's over its textbook course packets. It was a near disaster. And while a random kind word from the TV anchor Jim Lehrer helped his public image, he ultimately lost the case. The company survived, yeah, but it was under this strict injunction that was a constant stressful reminder of just how close he came to losing everything. So after 30 years of that kind of pressure, of worrying about payroll and lawsuits and everything else, the final sale of the company wasn't this sad, bittersweet moment. For Orphelia, it was a moment of pure, unfiltered relief. Nothing captures that feeling of relief better than this one little story. His ex-wife once bought a TV cabinet for $35,000. Now, while he was drowning in the stress of the business, that cabinet just made him furious. The day after the sale, he looked at the exact same cabinet and felt nothing but happiness. It was never about the cabinet, right? It was about the pressure. And finally, that pressure was gone.
So, what was his single best memory from 3 decades of building a literal empire? You'd think it would be the first million or some huge success, right? Nope, it was the day he sold it. He called the feeling euphoric. It wasn't about the money he gained, but about the massive weight he lost. He could finally breathe. So, after all the hustle, the stress, and yeah, the success, what did he learn from it all? Well, his final lessons aren't really about building a billion-dollar company. They're about something way more important: how to build a good life.
One of his guiding principles came from this really simple but powerful piece of advice from his mother. And you can actually see his own journey in it. He tried everything in his 20s, he figured out what he was best at with Kinkos in his 30s, and he definitely made money from it in his 40s. But that final step, learning to slow down in your 50s, that was the one he embraced with the most relief. And because he'd worried about money for 30 years, he came up with this really practical system for teaching kids about financial literacy. It's all about building good habits early. A small allowance gets broken up into spending, giving, and saving. And making them use their own money for wants, that isn't about punishment. It's about teaching them the real value of a dollar. And then taking them to the bank right away makes saving a tangible, rewarding ritual. He believes that deep down, we all have this internal conflict kind of raging inside us. It's that vulnerable, insecure 13-year-old part of us constantly fighting with our competent adult self. He says that wisdom is just finally learning how to put that 13-year-old in their proper place. So after everything, the billions, the stress, the fame, his ultimate definition of success has nothing to do with business. It's about what truly lasts. It's so incredibly simple and human. And so the story of this reluctant billionaire who really only found happiness after letting his empire go leaves us with a question for ourselves. Beyond the numbers, beyond the titles, what does success really mean to you? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.